Hello everyone, welcome to the Fly Racing post-race show, coming to you from round 12 of the 2012 Can-Am Grand National Cross Country Series. We're here at the AMSOIL Ironman GNCC, one of the most historic rounds on the series. Everybody knows this place for its huge crowds, huge hills, creek crossings, awesome field sections, and some amazing dirt if the conditions are right. And this weekend we were gracing some pretty good conditions considering what we had on Friday. We got here Friday afternoon and people were being towed into the pits. It was a pretty ugly mess. You know, we got a lot of rain on Friday afternoon. Thankfully, the ATVs came through and got a lot of that slop off of the top. So all of you guys that hate that the ATVs ride first, be thankful, because if you rode first, this place would have been a complete nightmare and not much fun, trust me. So yeah, this morning I actually got to go out and race. The first time I've raced this year, got to see a little bit of the course, and it was rough, like really, really rough, like 2 foot deep whoops through the woods. But the field sections were fun because the dirt made you feel like a hero. But I knew after just one lap, that was all I could do, that the guys that were racing this afternoon were really going to be in for a tough challenge. It was going to be a survival race. I think I tweeted earlier that whoever wins today is going to be putting the man in Ironman of the GNCC. All right, I've waxed poetic enough. Let's just get right to it. In the XC1 Pro Class, shocker, Paul Whibley pulled his 12th consecutive hole shot, got out to an early lead there. Caleb Russell's bike did not fire initially. He was dead last going into the first and second turn, then in the third turn ran into the back of Jordan Ashburn, so he was dead last. So for those keeping track at home for the point standings for the championship, we had the guy who was in first place, the guy who was in second place, in last place. Not so good for the points. We had Charlie Mullins up there in second. We had Chris Bach. We had, gosh, I can't even remember, Thad Duvall, Jordan Ashburn. There was a whole slew of riders. I think we had about 6 or 7 guys. Takeshi Koikita was in that mix. It was a pretty good freight train going at the beginning of the race. And just a few miles in, Caleb Russell had already made up enough ground where he got into that mix. And for the first 2 or 3 laps of the race, we saw some mix-ups. Those guys were jumping back and forth. Bach was up there as high as second place. Charlie was leading. Paul was leading. Thad Duvall was leading. It was a crazy race, shake up, and eventually Caleb worked his way into that mix, like I said, and started getting like it was going to become a pretty good battle between those guys. Then Caleb gets stuck on the Ironman hill. Big separation between him and the rest of the pack. He falls back, and he must have ran into more issues than we know about, because he eventually faded way back. He was actually excuse me, in the middle of the XC2 guys. I think he had at one point Stuart Baylor and Jason Thomas in front of him. He was pretty far off the pack. But while that was going on, we had Charlie Mullins, Paul Whibley, and Thad Duvall pretty much separate themselves from the rest of the pack. We saw Rory Mead, who was a guy I failed to mention just a little bit ago. He was up there in that mix with Chris Bach, and those guys were about 4th and 5th, changing spots. Bach eventually moved up to 4th, but it was those top 3 guys, like I said, Mullins, Whibley, Duvall, who were constantly changing positions, 1st through 3rd. The gap, we'd see it stretch just a little bit, and then it would get closed back up. And a lot of it had to do with pit strategy. Some of the guys were stopping, some of the guys weren't, which is something that would play a bigger part in this race. With 1 lap to go in the race, the final lap of the race, Paul Whibley runs out of gas about 4 miles into the track. Just so happens that he runs out of gas next to a Jimmy Jarrett who had stopped in the middle of the race. I'm not sure exactly why, but he was helping riders up a pretty gnarly hill climb at about the 4 mile mark, and there was no one else out there. So I talked to Thad Duvall, and he said Jimmy was out there for a lot of the race helping those guys up. Barry Hawk was there, watched this happen. Jimmy Jarrett was able to give fuel to Paul Whibley, enough for him to finish. Now, this is where the rules get a little bit tricky. If you can check the rule book, I might not have the wording exactly correct, but the rule states that a rider is allowed to receive fuel outside of the pro pits if they run completely out of gas. And it doesn't specify any longer who can give them the gas. It used to be only another rider, but now it's another rider or a staff personnel. But the caveat is they can only give them enough gas to make it back to the pro pits. There they have to fuel up. So we're not 100% sure at this point if Wibbs actually made it back to the pro pits and fueled up there. I know there was a little bit of a controversy near the end of the race. Regardless, he ends up finishing 4th, but the big shakeup is while he's stopped there out of gas, Caleb Russell goes past, moves his way into 3rd place overall. Crazy. So at one point in the race, Caleb Russell was 2 minutes behind Paul Whibley. He ends up beating him in the race, finishes third. Just a crazy shakeup there, something that no one would have really expected. So now for the point standings between those two guys, Whibley holds a 1-point lead at this time going into the last round. Insane. Caleb Russell said he was so pissed off while he was riding that he didn't even realize that he passed Paul Whibley. So he came across the finish line in third and had no idea, which I'm sure was a nice surprise. He almost cracked a smile on the podium, which is about all you can get out of him. But, all right, enough about those two guys. Got to give credit to the guy who won the race, Charlie Mullins, who's had a heck of a year, struggled mightily. Looked like he was going to get his first win last race at Powerline Park. Wasn't able to do it. Now, mind you, folks, he is riding a 4th-degree AC separation that he suffered at the 6 days. Takes the win over Thad Duvall, who gets second, who was at one point in the race on that last lap, we were wondering if he was going to be able to even finish. His bike was making some funny grinding noises. He wasn't really sure if it was clutch plates that broke. At one point we thought it was his chain, maybe something in the motor letting loose. Regardless, he made it to the finish, 2nd place. So nice little ending stretch of the season there for Thad. You know, he got his first win at Unadilla and another podium here, so a solid ride for him. Chris Bach ended the day in 4th. He was looking really solid. Thought might be a great ride for him in his home state race, but he wasn't able to land it up on the box. And that's pretty much it for the XC1 class. Let's move to XC2. In the XC2 Pro Lights class, we saw Aaron Plessinger grab his 2nd hole shot in only his 2nd race. Pretty crazy stuff there. But it wasn't long before we had Jason Thomas, Stuart Baylor, and Andrew DeLong separate themselves from the rest of the pack early on. Especially a crazy thing for DeLong, who never gets good starts. Baylor even made a joke about it on the podium, about how he was so surprised to see Andrew up there at such the early stage of the race. But those guys, yeah, definitely separated themselves from the rest of the pack. And, you know, DeLong ended up running into some issues, and he kind of dropped back from Stu and from Jason. He had a couple problems on a hill climb and stuff. But Stuart and Jason were actually battling for the overall position in the race. They were, you know, just a few seconds away from first. I think they were 2nd and 3rd. Stu was saying at various points in the track he was getting pit boards that they were actually ahead of those guys, and then some of the the wide open field sections, like behind me, the 450s were able to make up a little bit of time on them and stretch it back out. But as we saw a shake-up in the XC1 class with the pro points with Caleb Russell being so far back, Whibley up front, and then that getting all tossed around. This class, it was a knockdown, drag-out dogfight between those two. They changed positions. I don't know how many times it was constantly changing between Stu and Jason. Heading into the last lap, Baylor was going up a hill climb, got stuck. Thomas ran into him. Baylor was able to get going before Thomas was, and he was able to cruise in with just a few second lead over Jason Thomas. So what that does for the championship is it gives Stu a 1-point lead heading into Loretta Lynn's, so that in both of our pro classes we have 1-point leads between Paul Whibley and Caleb Russell, and 1 point between Stuart Baylor and Jason Thomas. So it is going to be an awesome race at Loretta's. Pretty pumped on that. Can't wait to see. It's going to be a freaking barn burner. I don't even know how else to describe it. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. You know, Wibbs has a championship in the bag. He's done it before. He knows how to do it. Caleb Russell hasn't won an XC1 championship, but he has 2 XC2 Pro Lights championships. Obviously, Stuart Baylor won the championship last year, and Jason Thomas, in his years racing XC2, has been close, has finished second many times, but has never been able to take it to the final round. So it's going to be interesting, man. You know, Stu wrapped up that National Enduro title, so he's got that pressure off his shoulders, but it's going to be a battle. And then we've got Andrew DeLong, who was not happy with his performance today, so I know he's going to be wanting to go out on a bang on top, and he could be out there and, you know, play spoiler if he wins, or if he's able to finish second, or when one of the other guy wins, he could, you know, be that separation. But I guess obviously that doesn't really matter, because it's whoever beats who is going to be the champ. I won't think too much into this. So the sun's going down behind the clouds. It's getting dark. I'm tired. I rode for the first time in like 3 months, and I'm cramped up all over because I'm old and out of shape. So with that, I'm going to wrap this thing up. We'll see you in a couple weeks from Loretta Lynn's. Don't forget, the bikes race on Saturday this time, not on Sunday, so all the guys can head over to the National Enduro in Alabama on Sunday. So that's it. I'm Jason Hooper, signing off from the Ironman. We'll see you in a couple weeks. America! All right, that was for the fans. That was Bolt On in the background. All right, here we go. Let's do this.